The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days straight. It was the kind of night where most people stayed home, ordered delivery, stayed warm under a blanket with something playing in the background that they weren't really watching. But Keanu Reeves was already outside. Not in a limo, not in anything close. He was walking alone, a plain gray hoodie pulled halfway over his face, worn jeans, boots that had seen better days, no watch, no phone visible, nothing that would make anyone look twice. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens when rain does the work of emptying a place. A few cars passed, headlights cutting through the gray. No one slowed down. No one looked his way. He stopped in front of a small restaurant tucked between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. The kind of place that doesn't have a website. The kind of place where the menu is handwritten on a chalkboard, and the lighting is so dim you can barely read the specials. A small neon sign flickered above the door, half the letters barely working anymore. But the place was open, and people were inside. He pushed the door open. A small bell rang above his head. No one turned around. The place was maybe 60% full. Families in the corner. A couple arguing quietly near the window. 2 guys at the bar sharing a pitcher of beer and laughing too loud. And behind the counter, a woman mid-30s, maybe younger. Hard to tell. She had dark hair pulled back fast, like she hadn't had time to do anything with it. Apron still on, moving quick. Coffee in one hand, receipt in the other. She glanced up for exactly 1 second. "Sit anywhere," she said. Didn't smile, didn't frown, just said it, like she meant it and had somewhere else to be. Keanu nodded. He walked toward a small 2-person table near the back. The kind of table that faces the wall. The kind nobody asks for. He sat down, picked up the laminated menu. And here's the thing, no one came to his table for 4 full minutes. Not because they were busy. 3 servers were walking back and forth, refilling water glasses 2 tables away, chatting near the kitchen door. One of them walked right past him. Twice, Keanu didn't move, didn't wave anyone down, didn't look annoyed. He just sat there, waiting. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and immediately felt like they didn't belong? Like the whole space was designed to push them out without saying a single word? That's exactly what was happening here. And no one inside that building had any idea. 6 months before that rainy night, Keanu was in Los Angeles. Not on a set. Not at a premiere. Not doing any of the things the world expects him to do. He was in a small office. Plain walls. A desk, a laptop. A cup of cold coffee he'd forgotten about an hour ago. He was reading. Not a script. Not fan mail. Not contracts. He was reading reports. Thick ones. Pages and pages of data, numbers, testimonials, all from restaurants. Here's why. 2 years prior, Keanu had quietly, and we mean quietly, invested in a small hospitality company. Not the flashy kind. Not the kind that opens trendy spots in Hollywood with celebrity chefs and $100 appetizers. This company did something different. They partnered with struggling, independent restaurants across the country. Small family-owned places. The kind that had been open for 20, 30, sometimes 40 years. The kind that survived on regulars and luck and stubbornness. The idea was simple: provide funding, provide support, help these restaurants survive, not to make money, to preserve something. Keanu believed, genuinely believed, that these small restaurants were part of the soul of a community. That when one closed, something irreplaceable was lost. Not just a business, a gathering place, a memory, a piece of someone's childhood. So he invested quietly. Behind the scenes, no press releases, no Instagram posts, no red carpet announcements, just a check and a phone call where he said, "Do what you do. I just want to help you keep doing it." For a while it worked. Restaurants got funding. Some expanded a little. Others just survived another year. And Keanu felt good about it. Felt like he was actually doing something that mattered beyond the screen. But then the reports started coming in, and not all of them were good. Some of the restaurants that had received the most support, they weren't just surviving, they were changing, and not for the better. One report, in particular, caught Keanu's attention. It was about a restaurant in a small town about 2 hours outside Los Angeles. A place that had been open for over 30 years. Family-run, well, loved by the locals. But in the last year, something had shifted. The owner, an older gentleman named Frank, had handed more control to his son. The son had brought in new management, new policies, a new way of doing things. And the staff that had been loyal for years, they were being treated differently. The reports described a slow, quiet kind of cruelty. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that makes the news. The kind where people are made to feel invisible. Where tips were redistributed without explanation. Where hours were cut for employees who had been there the longest. Where a new hierarchy was created, not based on skill or seniority, but on how presentable someone looked. One employee, a waitress who had worked there for 7 years, wrote a testimonial that stopped Keanu cold. She described how she was moved to the back tables. The ones no one sat at voluntarily. The ones that never got tipped well. She described how newer employees, who had been there for months, were given the prime tables near the front simply because they dressed a certain way or looked a certain way. She didn't sound angry in the testimonial. She sounded tired. And that, more than anything, is what got to Keanu, not rage, not drama. Just quiet exhaustion from someone who had given years of her life to a place and was slowly being made to feel like she didn't belong there. Keanu read that testimonial 3 times. Then he closed his laptop, sat in silence for a long time, and then he picked up his phone and called his assistant. "I need to go see this place," he said. "Which one?" "The one in the report. The one with the waitress." His assistant paused. "Do you want me to set something up? Reach out to the owner?" "No," Keanu said. "No one can know I'm coming?" "How do you want to do it?" Keanu thought for a second. "I'll go as nobody." And that's exactly what he did. That's why he was sitting in that back table on a rainy Tuesday night. Not as Keanu Reeves, as nobody. And the woman behind the counter, the one with the dark hair and the apron and the quick way of moving through the room. That was her, the waitress from the report. And she had no idea who was sitting at her table. Think about it, the person sitting quietly in the corner, the one no one notices. Sometimes they're the one watching the closest. And sometimes they already know everything. Stay close, because what happens next changes everything. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like every single person around you had already decided you didn't matter? That feeling. That's exactly what Keanu was about to experience firsthand. He sat there quietly. The menu was still in his hands. But he wasn't reading it anymore. He was feeling it. The shift in the room. The way the air moved around him, or rather, the way it didn't, like he was furniture. Like he was part of the wall. Something that belonged there but didn't need to be acknowledged. Executives walked past him. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. One glanced at his clothes and looked away. Not quickly. Slowly. Deliberately. The kind of look that says everything without saying a single word. A look that travels from the worn boots to the faded hoodie and back again. A look that makes a decision in less than 2 seconds. Not worth my time. Another laughed on the phone. Loud. Careless. Standing just 3 feet from Keanu's table, leaning against the wall like the space belonged to him. The conversation was about nothing. Weekend plans. A deal that had closed. Someone's new car. Normal talk. Loud talk. The kind of talk that fills a room and leaves no space for anyone else. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't even glance in Keanu's direction. Behind the glass walls, the boardroom, or what passed as one in this small restaurant, was a live laughter. Whiskey glasses. Expensive watches catching the dim light. The managers and the newer staff gathered there after the rush. Like it was their space. Their reward. Their territory. And it was. Because no one had ever told them it wasn't. 7 minutes passed. Keanu counted them, not out of impatience, out of observation. 7 full minutes. And in that time, not a single person had come to his table. Not to take an order. Not to offer water. Not to ask if he needed anything at all. He watched a server refill water at the table next to him. A family. A mom, a dad, 2 kids. Normal people. They got the attention. They got the smile. They got the, "Let me know if you need anything else." Then the server turned. Walked right past Keanu's table. Didn't slow down. Didn't even look. No one cared. And here's the thing that made it worse. It wasn't malicious. That's what made it so real. No one was doing this on purpose. No one had sat down and said, "Let's make this guy feel invisible." It was automatic, instinctive. The kind of behavior that builds itself quietly over time, in a place where certain people are treated as important and certain people are not. And Keanu was sitting on the wrong side of that line. Not because of anything he had done. Because of how he looked. Because of the hoodie. The boots. The way he sat, quiet, still, not demanding anything. The way he didn't raise his hand or snap his fingers or do any of the things people do when they expect to be served. He just existed, quietly. And in a room full of people who had learned to measure worth by appearance, that quiet existence was easy to ignore. He sat there and let it happen. Let it wash over him. Not because he enjoyed it. Because he needed to feel it. He needed to understand, not from a report, not from a testimonial on a page, what it actually felt like. To sit in a place you've been told to sit in, surrounded by people who have decided you don't count and have no power to change any of it. This was what she had been living. Every single day. For 7 years. Keanu thought about that. Thought about the woman who had told him to sit anywhere. The one who had moved through this restaurant with more skill than anyone else in the room. The one who had been pushed to the back, table after table, night after night. She hadn't been ignored because she was bad at her job. She had been ignored because the system around her had quietly decided she was easy to ignore, and everyone had let it happen. Not out of hate, out of something quieter. Out of not noticing. Out of not caring enough to look. Keanu sat very still. The candle on his table flickered, and somewhere in the back of his mind, behind the calm and the patience and the quiet way he carried himself through the world, something shifted. Not anger. Something colder. Something that said this ends tonight. 7 minutes. That's all it took for a room full of people to show exactly who they were. And Keanu saw every single second of it. But the real question is, what did he do about it? Keep watching. Because the next part changes everything. You know that feeling when someone hands you something and you instantly know, before you even open it, that it's going to change everything. That's exactly what happened next, and no one saw it coming. It was close to 10 o'clock. The restaurant had thinned out. The loud couple by the window had left. The two guys at the bar had moved on to somewhere louder. A few tables remained, mostly quiet ones, people finishing up, checking phones, leaving tips in cash because the card reader near the back had been broken for 2 weeks and no one had bothered to fix it. Keanu was still sitting. He had finished eating a long time ago, but he hadn't asked for the check. He was waiting, not sure for what exactly. He had been thinking about what to do next. How to approach this. How to start a conversation that would actually lead somewhere without blowing his cover or making the whole thing uncomfortable. And then she came back. The waitress. She walked up to the table and stopped. For a second, she just stood there, like she was deciding whether to say something. Then she did. "You've been here a while," she said, not rude, curious. Now, here's the thing most people don't understand about moments like this. When someone has been ignored for a long time, they start to notice the small things. The tiny details that everyone else walks right past. Like how long someone has been sitting. Like whether their glass is empty. Like whether they look comfortable or quietly uncomfortable. She noticed all of it. Because that's what happens when you spend years being invisible. You learn to watch. You learn to read rooms. You learn to see the things no one else bothers to look at. "I have," Keanu said. "Good spot." She looked around the restaurant. At the dim lights. At the slightly sticky tables. At the broken card reader no one had touched. "That's one word for it," she said, the ghost of a smile. And here's why that moment mattered. Most people, when they feel unseen, stop smiling altogether. They stop offering small moments of connection. They protect themselves by pulling back. But she didn't do that. She was still there. Still present. Still human. Despite everything this place had put her through. That told Keanu everything he needed to know about her character. Keanu laughed. A real one. Small and quiet. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She tilted her head. Cautious but not closed off, "Sure." "How long have you worked here?" 7 years, she said. "And you enjoy it?" She paused on that one. Really paused. "I enjoy the people," she said carefully. "Some of them." Keanu nodded. He understood what she wasn't saying. And this is the part that most people miss in conversations like this. When someone says, "some of them," they're not being vague. They're being careful. They're protecting themselves. They've learned, through experience, not choice, that saying too much can make things worse. That being honest about how you feel in a place can get you pushed further into the shadows. She was being careful. Because she had learned to be. "Do you mind if I stay a little longer?" he asked. "I'm not in any rush. I'll order something else if you want." "You don't have to order anything," she said. "It's slow tonight. I don't mind." She turned to leave, and then something stopped her. She reached into the pocket of her apron, pulled out a folded piece of paper, looked at it for a second, then looked at Keanu. Something passed across her face. A calculation. A decision being made in real time. Now. This is the moment everything shifted. And here's why she did what she did. When you've been carrying something heavy for a long time, something you can't tell anyone, something that keeps you up at night, you start looking for a sign. Not a big sign. Not something dramatic. Just a small moment that tells you it might be safe. That this person right here, right now, might actually listen. Keanu had given her that sign without even knowing it. He had stayed. He had asked about her. He had listened. In a place where no one had done any of those things in a very long time. And then she handed it to him. "Here," she said. Keanu looked at the paper, then back at her. "What's this?" "Just read it," she said, "when you get a chance." And before he could say anything else, she was gone. Back into the kitchen. Behind the door. Out of sight. Keanu looked down at the folded paper in his hand. It was small, torn from a notepad, the same kind she used to take orders. The handwriting was neat but rushed, like it had been written in a hurry, or like the person writing it had been nervous. Here's the thing about notes like this. People write them when they can't say the words out loud, when saying it feels too dangerous, when the risk of being heard by the wrong person is too high. A note is quiet. A note is private. A note is the safest way to say something that the world around you doesn't want you to say. He unfolded it. And read it. What was written on that note? It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't a complaint. It was something Keanu didn't expect at all. It was a warning, not for him, for her, for everyone who worked there. The note said, in short, direct sentences, that the new management was planning something. Something bigger than just bad schedules and unfair table assignments. They were planning to sell the restaurant, not to someone who would keep it running, to a developer. The building was going to be torn down, and every single person who worked there, the regulars, the loyal ones, the ones who had given years of their life to that place, was going to lose their jobs, and no one had told them, not Frank, not his son, not the new managers, no one. The sale was supposed to happen in 3 weeks. Keanu read it twice, then a third time. Then he sat back in his chair and let the weight of it settle over him, because now everything had changed. She didn't hand him that note by accident. She handed it to him because something told her, something deep, something instinctive, that he was the right person. But why? And what did Keanu do the moment he finished reading it? That answer is coming next, and it's bigger than you think.
What if the person everyone had been ignoring this whole time was actually the one person who knew everything? What if the woman no one bothered to look at had been quietly collecting the truth, piece by piece, for months? That's exactly what was about to come out, and it was bigger than anyone in that building could have imagined. Keanu didn't leave that night, not right away. He sat at that table until the last customer walked out, until the chairs at the bar were turned upside down, until the only sounds left in the restaurant were the hum of the refrigerator and the quiet clinking of dishes being washed in the back. And then he stood up, walked toward the kitchen door, pushed it open gently. She was there, alone, drying plates with a towel, moving on autopilot, the kind of motion that comes from doing the same thing thousands of times. She looked up when she saw him and didn't flinch, didn't look surprised that he was still there. "The note," he said simply. She set the plate down. "Yeah," she said. "How did you find out?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. Not defensively, just tired. "I've worked here 7 years," she said. "You'll learn things in 7 years. You'll learn who talks to who. You learn what doors stay locked and which ones don't. You learn which conversations people think no one is hearing." Keanu nodded slowly. "The new management," she continued. "They weren't as careful as they thought. Emails left open on the office computer. Phone calls taken in the break room like it was private. I wasn't snooping. I was just there, doing my job, and the information was just everywhere. Once you started looking, and here's what most people don't understand about situations like this. When someone is pushed to the background, they don't disappear. They become invisible, and invisible people hear everything. They see everything, because no one is guarding their words around someone they've already decided doesn't matter. That's exactly what happened here. The management thought she was just another waitress, someone easy to overlook, someone who wouldn't notice, someone who wouldn't care enough to pay attention. They were wrong on every single count. "And you've been collecting it?" Keanu said. "For months," she said. "I have documents, screenshots, dates, names, everything." She paused. "I didn't know what to do with it. I thought about going to the press. I thought about confronting Frank, but Frank isn't really running anything anymore. His son is, and his son is in on it." Keanu let that sit, because that's the part that makes the story so uncomfortable. It wasn't a stranger who did this. It wasn't some outside villain who walked in and started destroying things. It was family. It was someone Frank had trusted his entire life. Someone who had grown up in that restaurant. Someone who should have protected it more than anyone. And instead, he was the one tearing it apart from the inside. "The sale?" he said. "How far along is it?" "Almost done. The paperwork is mostly signed. They just need one more signature, Frank's. And from what I've heard, they've already got him agreeing to it. They told him it was a good deal, that he'd get enough money to retire. They didn't tell him what would happen to the building, or to us." "Do the other employees know?" She shook her head. No one knows. That's the point. If anyone found out before the deal closed, they might fight back. They might go public. They might actually stop it. And this is the part that hits different. Think about it for a second. A whole team of people who've given years, sometimes decades, to one place. People who had shown up every single day, worked hard, built something real. And the people running things had made a decision that would destroy all of that, without telling a single one of them. Not out of respect, out of fear. Because they actually knew, that if the employees found out, they would fight. So they kept it hidden. They kept it quiet. And they kept pushing the people who might notice, people like her, further and further into the shadows. She looked at Keanu. That's why I gave you the note. He tilted his head. Me? You've been sitting in that restaurant for 2 hours, she said, watching, not eating. Not on your phone, not doing anything normal people do when they sit alone in a restaurant. She wasn't smiling now. I don't know who you are, she said, but I know you're not just some random guy who wandered in off the street. Keanu studied her face. She was sharp. Sharper than anyone in that building had given her credit for. You're right, he said. He didn't elaborate. Not yet. So here's what I need to know, she said, stepping forward slightly. Can you actually do something about this? Or are you just someone who's going to feel sorry for us and walk out? It was direct, almost blunt, and it was exactly the right question. Because that was the moment, right there, in that kitchen, under the fluorescent light, where Keanu Reeves stopped being an observer and became something else entirely. Tell me everything, he said, and she did. Over the next 40 minutes sitting on overturned crates in the back of that kitchen, she laid it all out. The timeline, the key players, the documents she had quietly saved, the conversations she had overheard, the names of the developers, the terms of the deal, the amount of money changing hands, and how little of it was going to the people who actually built that restaurant. Keanu listened without interrupting. He asked a few questions, specific ones, the kind that told her he wasn't just sympathizing, he was strategizing. And as she talked, something else became clear. This wasn't an isolated case. The same management company, the same people behind the new policies at this restaurant had done this before. 3 other small restaurants in the area, all closed in the last 2 years, all sold to developers, all stripped of the people who had made them what they were. This was a pattern, a quiet, systematic pattern of buying trust, gutting communities, and profiting from the wreckage. And no one had connected the dots until this woman who had been pushed to the back tables, the one everyone had decided didn't matter. She was the one who saw it all. She was the one who had been keeping track. She was the only one in that entire operation who had been paying attention. Keanu leaned back on the crate, looked at her, and for the first time that night, a real full smile crossed his face. Not because the situation was funny, because he had just realized something. The person everyone had been ignoring, she was the most important person in the room, and in the next 72 hours, she was going to prove it.
She had been invisible for 7 years. And that invisibility, that was actually her greatest weapon. Because while everyone around her was looking the other way, she was the only one who saw the full picture. Now the question is, what did Keanu do with everything she told him?
To know that moment when someone has been patient for a long time, not because they're weak, but because they were waiting for the right moment. That moment had arrived, and what happened next was something no one in that restaurant could have predicted. Keanu didn't sleep that night, not because he was anxious, not because he was scared, because he was planning. He sat in his car in the parking lot of a small motel 2 miles from the restaurant. Laptop open, phone in hand, running through everything she had told him. And here's the thing most people don't understand about someone like Keanu. When he decides to do something, he doesn't rush. He doesn't make noise. He doesn't do it for attention. He does it quietly, carefully. The way you build something that actually lasts. Because the ones who move loud and fast, they usually break things. The ones who move slow and steady, they fix them. Keanu was fixing something. The documents she had collected were thorough, almost frighteningly so. She had screenshots of emails between the son, Frank's son, whose name was David, and the development company. She had recorded snippets of phone conversations. She had dates, amounts, signatures that had already been forged, Frank's signature, copied from old paperwork, used on documents he had never seen. Forgery. Now, here's why that word matters so much. Forgery isn't just a legal term. It's a betrayal. It means someone looked at a person they were supposed to protect. In this case, Frank. His own father, and decided to use his name without his knowledge. Decided that what Frank wanted didn't matter. Decided that the decades of work Frank had put into building something real could be used to destroy it. That wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. That was a crime. Keanu made 3 calls before sunrise. The first was to his lawyer, not a Hollywood lawyer. A real one. The kind who dealt with corporate law and fraud cases, and the kind of quiet, ugly business that never makes the news. The kind of lawyer who doesn't talk to the press, who doesn't post on social media, who just does the work. He told him everything. Every detail, every document, every name. The lawyer was quiet for a long time after Keanu finished. Then he said, "This is bigger than one restaurant." "I know," Keanu said. "Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since I read that report 6 months ago." The second call was to the board of the hospitality company he had invested in, the one that had originally funded this restaurant. He told them, calmly and clearly, what was happening, what had been happening, and what needed to happen next. And here's why this call mattered, because Keanu wasn't just an investor. It was someone the board respected. Someone they listened to. Not because of his fame, because of his track record, because every single time he had said something in that boardroom, he had been right. So when he spoke, they didn't argue. They didn't question. They moved. The third call was to someone he trusted more than almost anyone, a woman he had known for years. Not in the industry, not in entertainment at all. Someone who had spent decades working in investigative journalism before retiring. Someone who knew how to find things, how to verify things, how to build a case that would hold up not just in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. He told her everything. And she said, without missing a beat, "I'll have something for you by tonight." By noon the next day, the picture was much bigger than Keanu had initially understood. The development company wasn't just targeting this one restaurant. They had a list, 14 properties across 3 states, all small businesses, all family-owned, all in areas where real estate was quietly becoming valuable. And here's the part that makes your stomach drop. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned, carefully, deliberately planned. Someone had sat down and looked at a map, looked at which neighborhoods were growing, which properties were valuable, and then figured out the easiest way to get them, not by paying fair prices, but by manipulating the people who owned them. The pattern was the same every time. A new management team would come in. They'd be friendly at first. They'd offer support. They'd make the owners feel like they were being taken care of. Then the slow squeeze would begin. Policies would change. Employees who knew too much or asked too many questions would be pushed out. The owner would be gradually isolated from the day-to-day operations, and by the time anyone realized what was happening, the paperwork was already being signed. It was, in the simplest terms, a predatory scheme designed to steal from people who trusted the wrong people, and it had been working, because no one was watching. No one except her. Keanu spent the afternoon preparing, not with grand gestures, not with dramatic press conferences or public statements. He prepared the way he always did, quietly, methodically, with care. He met with his lawyer to go over the legal options. They were solid. The forged signatures alone were enough to halt the sale and potentially bring criminal charges against David and the development company. He met with the journalist to review the evidence she had verified. It was airtight. And here's the thing that most people would never do before making any move. Keanu called her. The waitress. Not to give her instructions, not to tell her what was going to happen, to ask her how she wanted to do it, because this was her fight first. It had always been her fight. He was just showing up to stand next to her in it. And then at 4 o'clock that afternoon, he called her again. "I need you to come somewhere with me tonight," Keanu said. There was a pause. "Where?" "Back to the restaurant, but not for dinner." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," she said. "What's happening tonight? We end this. She was quiet for a moment, and then, I've been waiting 7 years for someone to say that. They met at 6. The restaurant was open. It was a weekday, so the crowd would be light. David would be there. He was always there in the evenings, playing the role of the attentive manager while the real work, the dirty work, happened behind closed doors. Keanu walked in. No hoodie this time, no disguise, just himself. And this time, people noticed. A murmur moved through the small room. A few phones came out. Someone whispered. Keanu ignored all of it. He walked straight to the back office. The door was half open. David was inside, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, scrolling through his phone. Keanu pushed the door open the rest of the way. David looked up, and for 1 second, just one, something flickered across his face. Recognition. Fear. He tried to cover it fast, tried to put on the confident manager smile, the one that had worked so well for so long. "Can I help you?" he said, standing up. And here's why David's reaction told you everything. A person who has nothing to hide doesn't react with fear. They react with confusion, with curiosity. But David, the man who had been running this operation for months, who had forged his own father's signature, who had kept an entire team of people in the dark, he knew exactly what this moment could mean. He just didn't know how bad it was going to get. Keanu didn't sit down, didn't raise his voice. "I know about the sale," he said. The smile disappeared. "I know about the forged signatures. I know about the development company. I know about the other 14 properties." David's mouth opened, closed, "And I know you didn't tell anyone." The room was very quiet. From the doorway, she appeared. The waitress, standing just behind Keanu, calm, steady, present. David looked at her, and in that moment, he understood exactly how this had happened. The woman he and the rest of the management had spent months ignoring, the woman they had pushed to the back of the restaurant, the woman they had decided didn't matter. She was the one who had seen everything. She was the one who had kept the records. She was the one who had made sure none of this could be hidden anymore. David sat back down slowly. His hands were shaking. Keanu let the silence sit for a long time. Long enough for David to understand that there was no version of this story where he came out ahead. And then Keanu spoke again, quietly, calmly.
Every story has a moment where everything finally makes sense. Where all the pieces, the pain, the patience, the quiet fight, come together into something real. This was that moment. And what happened next wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. What happened next didn't make the news. Not right away. Not because it wasn't important. But because Keanu made sure it was handled the right way. Not fast, not loud, not for attention, the right way. And here's why that matters. Most people, when they finally get the chance to expose something this big, they want the world to see it. They want the drama. They want the moment where everyone watches the bad guy fall. But Keanu understood something most people don't, that the point was never about making David look bad. The point was about making sure it never happened again. The legal process moved quietly over the next 2 weeks. David cooperated, not because he wanted to, but because the alternative was significantly worse. The forged signatures were flagged. The sale was halted. The development company was formally investigated, and within days, it became clear that this wasn't just one bad actor. It was an organized operation that had been running for years. And here's the part that most people gloss over. The investigation didn't just stop at David. It went deeper. Into the people behind the development company. Into the systems that had allowed 14 properties to be quietly stolen from families who had trusted the wrong people. Into the silence that had protected all of it. Because the truth is, David couldn't have done any of this alone. He had help, and that help was about to be held accountable too. Frank, the original owner, was told the truth. All of it. He didn't take it well. Not at first. The betrayal of his own son hit him hard. He sat in his office for a long time, staring at papers he had never been shown, trying to understand how something he had built over 3 decades had been turned into a tool by someone he trusted completely. And this is the part that breaks your heart a little. Frank wasn't a bad man. He wasn't careless. He was a man who had spent his entire life building something with his own hands, and he had trusted his son to help him keep it alive. That trust, the kind that comes from love, from family, from believing in someone because they're yours, that's the kind of trust that's hardest to recover from when it's broken. But he recovered, because someone sat with him through it. Someone who didn't lecture him, didn't make him feel foolish, just sat there, quietly, Present. Keanu. They talked for hours over the course of several days, not about business, about the restaurant, about what it meant, about the people who had kept it alive, about what it was worth, not in dollars, but in everything else. And here's what those conversations really were. They were about healing. About a man looking at the wreckage of something he loved and figuring out whether there was still something worth saving. Keanu didn't give him answers. He gave him space. The kind of space that lets someone find their own way back. And by the end of those conversations, Frank understood something he should have seen a long time ago. The most valuable people in his restaurant had never been the ones in the front. They had been the ones in the back. The ones who showed up every day and did the work without expecting to be seen. The ones who noticed things no one else did. The ones who cared about the place not because it was profitable, but because it was theirs. Frank made changes. Real ones. Not cosmetic. Not the kind that look good on paper but disappear in a week. He restructured the restaurant. Brought back fair scheduling. Redistributed tips the way they were always supposed to be distributed. Promoted people based on what they actually contributed. Not how they looked or how long they had been there, or how well they played politics. And he gave her, the waitress, the woman who had started everything, a role she had earned 100 times over but never been given. General manager. She almost said no, not because she didn't want it, because she didn't trust that it was real. And here's why that moment is so important. 7 years. 7 years of being told, not with words but with actions, that you don't matter. That your effort doesn't count. That someone else will always be chosen over you. After 7 years of that, hope becomes dangerous. Because hope means believing something can change. And believing something can change means opening yourself up to being hurt all over again. She had been hurt enough times to know that. But Frank sat her down, looked her in the eye, and said something simple. You saw what no one else saw. You did something about it when no one else would. That's not just loyalty. That's leadership. She took the job. And within 3 months, the restaurant was different. Not in the way customers would notice immediately. The menu was similar. The space was the same. The lighting was still a little dim, but the feeling had changed. The staff moved differently, with more ease, more confidence. The back tables got the same attention as the front ones. The newer employees learned from the ones who had been there longer, because now there was a reason to. Because now the people who knew the most were also the ones who had the most say. And the restaurant thrived, not because of fame, not because of a celebrity's name attached to it, but because the people inside it finally felt like they belonged. As for Keanu, he never told anyone publicly what he had done. Not in an interview. Not on social media. Not in a press release. Because that was never the point. The point was never about him. It was about a system that had quietly decided some people mattered more than others. And it was about proving, in the most real, most concrete way possible, that the people everyone had written off, they were often the most important ones in the room. Keanu visited the restaurant one more time, a few months later. He sat at a table, not the back one this time. She had moved him to the center of the room without asking. He smiled. She brought him a meal she had put together herself. Something simple, something warm. They talked for a while, not about business or deals or confrontations, about life, about people. About the quiet, ordinary moments that actually matter. And when he left that night, he left something on the table. Not money, a note. It said 2 words, thank you. Because sometimes the biggest stories aren't the loudest ones. Sometimes they happen in small restaurants with dim lighting and broken card readers. Sometimes they start with a woman who refused to stay invisible, even when everyone around her tried to make her disappear. And sometimes, the person who changes everything isn't the most powerful person in the room. They're just the one paying the closest attention.